was born in Nampa, Idaho. I'm a potato girl, an Irish potato girl, partly Irish, and moved to San Jose in 1951. And I guess I was 6 years old, and grew up there, and then we moved up to Yuba City in 77. So grew up there, met my husband there, had my children there, so, and it outgrew me. 2 daughters, 2 granddaughters. At one point, I was a campfire leader, and I was a camp director. And I took the kids, the older kids, out on a backpacking trip up. It took us 2.5 hours to get around the lake at about 7,000 feet. And we stayed the one night, and in the morning my daughter got up and said, everybody has to pack, get everything done before we have breakfast. And she was so insistent we did. And as we were having breakfast, we saw flames, and we started seeing cinders about baseball size coming down. She says, Mom, I dreamed about it. That's the reason I made you pack. It could have gotten there and we could have been blocked in. So she probably saved our lives, because it did come pretty close. And we were on Dead Man's Peak, which was the name of the mountain we were on. When I didn't realize that my life was different than the people I was around. And so when I was right around 6.5, I used to have friends come and visit me in my classroom. I mean, my house all the time. And I didn't know they were ghosts. I just thought they were interesting friends. And one of the friends told me she was my great-grandma Mason. And she would come and play. And one day she told me that she had a message from my dad. Now, she'd been dead 20 years before I was born. I had never seen a picture of her or even heard her name that I knew of, outside of her telling me. So I went running out, Daddy, 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 I've got a message to you from Grandma Mason. And he's going, what? Who are you talking about? And I gave him the message. I don't recall what it was. He and my mother were just in stunned silence. And it was a message that was very relevant to what he was experiencing with his mother at that time. And that's when they started telling me, stop imagining things. And they asked me what she looked like. They asked me to describe how she talked, and she was in her favorite dress, which she never was photographed in. So there was no way that even by accident I could have known this history about her. And when she came and gave the message, then she says, and I won't be back again. But she came and used to play with me, and then when I gave the message, she was gone. But I used to have a number of invisible friends that would come and visit with me. And I didn't know any different. I wasn't at all frightened. They were beautiful friends. They were kind. They were fun. I was a normal child, and so it was nice to have visitors at my house. And I didn't even, another thing that I did was that terrified my mother, and it was just before this incident, was I was playing at my friend's house next door, and somehow we wondered what it looked like from the rooftop. And so I said, oh, why don't we find out? She said, well, I guess I could get a ladder. And I says, you don't need a ladder. So I built esoteric energy stairs. And the two of us walked up the stairs and stood on the roof. My mother came out just as we were walking through midair and walking onto the roof, and she's standing there terrified. And when we got down, I got chewed out. She didn't want us to fall. We just walked up, looked around, thought about what it was, and then walked back down the stairs. They disappeared. And my mother was berserk about it. So it was interesting, some of the things that I did that I didn't know I shouldn't be able to do. When I was 5, I remember having 4 or 5 of my parents' friends that came over to see me, not them. They were all spread out on the floor because I was giving them my magic back rubs. And I remember that particular time when there were so many of them there. My mother would ask for the magic back rubs. And so I was doing the work that I do now when I was young. I just didn't know any different. I didn't tell too many people when I was going to the churches who I really was. I learned early that there was a time and a place for everything, and most of the churches that I attended didn't appreciate who I was. But it was interesting. I learned that almost all of the religions that I had gone to, the core principles were the same. That loving, caring, universal, like the Wiccans say, and it harm none, do as you wish. And that was the core in all of them, and they just practiced it different. They wrote about it differently, but it was the same deity. It was the same universal force. And so I think those times of doing that, it broadened my perspective to where, to me, God, the Tao, that universal, much larger being than the old man sitting on the throne in heaven, it is so much more. And by traveling around to all of the different religions, I could see that. I could see that commonality. And then when people got a hold of it, they just would shift it, and some would practice it in beautiful ways and some would not. And I have been to many different kinds of churches, including I was sort of an honorary Wiccan for a number of years and got to go through many of their ceremonies and learn about them quite a bit. And it's all the same. It's a grander design, and we are constantly learning how to improve ourselves, constantly learning to be stronger in spirit, stronger in conscience. And so I think that experience was not only good for me so I could make a decision multiple times on who I am and how I interact with a great being that's everything in my life. It was to be able to see a broader perspective, no one fixed image. It's just, I can take things from the Eastern religions, from the Wiccan, from the, any of the Christian, all of them. There's beauty in all of it. When I was young, that little boy that I used to take on the astral travel trips, he began to really wonder about me. And he began to realize that if I said, oh, there's somebody over in that corner, he would at least turn and look and pay attention. And so he was probably my first confirmation because, well, I was testing him with the astral travel at night just because of my curiosity to see if I was capable. And then that made him start asking other questions. And he's the one that I remember sharing more with. My parents and his parents were good friends. And so in friendly gatherings, I would see him more often. We were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And so he was pretty open to it. And it was nice that I had someone to share it with for a while. I did not have any insecurities about who I was and how my life was different. I'll tell a little bit. After the astral travel dreaming, then I saw horror movies, and I thought, I wonder if there really is such a place. So I started traveling to the hell realms, and in my dreams. And I would go and visit, and the demons would come at me, and I said, no, you can't do that. And I know I was actually traveling. I was not just dreaming. And so I would walk through the hell realms, and I would experience that. And I think that time that I spent, those few years that I spent doing that, I would make big dramatic movies in my dreams, and it was lucid dreaming. And I was working with energies that wanted to hurt me, and I found out they couldn't. And I do believe that that has a lot to do with why today I can walk into some very bad places, some very difficult places that would frighten most people like crazy. And it's like, oh, well, I've seen worse. And they didn't hurt me either. And so I think I was preparing myself. I'm feeling like my guides were kind of helping me prepare for what I would see later as an adult. So things like that. There's only been one time that I walked out of a place, and that's when I was young. I walked in, and it was a really bad demon, and he said, leave or I'll kill you, and I believed him. And so I said, okay, I'm leaving now, but I wouldn't leave at this stage of my life. Welcome to my therapy room. This is where my clients that come to see me actually sit, so it's strange for me to be sitting here. There's something very special about this room, and it is an interdimensional portal that and a set of angelic beings, the Creolad, decided that I'm a gatekeeper between dimensions. And they opened the portal at the house I used to live in. And it was while I was in a chat room with remote viewing people. And I got this call that I had to go out, didn't want to, and the people says, well, go, and we'll stay online and we'll watch you. And I went out, and there were these two absolutely beautiful, probably 7-foot tall beings. And they were physical. They had just walked through the portal they created. And they had, I didn't know it at the time, they had pendants that were like the Merkaba. And as it moved, that set the resonating frequency, and they control who can go to what dimension at what time. And they told me I'm the gatekeeper to make sure that it's usable but safe. And when I got ready to move, I said, what am I going to do? I can't leave the portal behind. They said, we'll move it. And I went, what? I said, oh, we can move it for you. It goes with you. It's not tied to a location. And so they put it in the center of this room for the work that I do. So when the people walk in here, they walk into this high energy portal. It goes beyond what I have set and what I've set with my crystals and the things that are in here to make it a very special place for discovering what's going on with yourself, what your options are. And when I do the energetic body work, it's, I think, even more profound because of the energies in the room. And my whole property is absolutely protected. People cannot come in and bring anything bad into my property. Years ago, and I think it's another story, I think I called it the story that never was. I had a gentleman that I had worked with, and he says, Laverne, I need to see you, and I need to see you today. So we set a time, and he drove up in this old Jeep, and it was just filled with stuff that looked like camping stuff. And I had thought, oh, we need to be outdoors, so I had set a place out on the deck in our backyard. And he says, you're the last person that will ever see me in society. He was an alien clone of a starship captain, what we would call a starship captain. And they kept abducting him to do tests to see, the test was to see how their kind could integrate into human society. And it sounds fantastic, but I believe every word he said. I could see it, I could feel it. And he had scars. He had all of the little scars. He had all the markings. Probably 30 times he had been abducted. And he says, when I leave you, I'm going out into the wilderness and nobody will ever see me again. And it was a fascinating discussion with him. And I think part of why I took him out back is that portal was right by where we were working, and that helped him be able to express his story and find that comfort. And he says, I really wanted to make you the last one here. And so this is, to me, a very sacred space where good things happen. When I have worked the few times with people who have a child or a loved one that's in a cult, first I work with the family or the friends or the close people that have the concern. And I try to find out what their concerns are, and I try to find out what is the background that may have caused a person to try to go into this. Now keep in mind, even the gangs, those are cults. And one of my high school boys was a gang member. And he said he turned there because he was looking for family, he was looking for recognition, he was looking for respect, he was looking for love. And I helped him get out of the gang and get into a profession that he could have gone a long ways. But they shot him when he was walking home one night. And so that was 2 years after we had gotten him out of the gang. We don't know if it was related or just he was an initiation victim. But he would have been, he was a great radio announcer. He had one of the best voices I've ever heard in my life for radio. And at 16, he already had his own radio show. But so I see those similarities of where you're looking for the ability for respect, you're looking for family, you're looking for love, all of that in the wrong places. And so working with the family to find that out, and then we can identify whether it's even possible to approach the person that is being affected. Most of my experience has been a person who says, I want out, help me get out. I've had people come to me and say, I know I'm in a bad place, help me get out, help me get away. The meaning of life, to me, is learning and growing. Learning how to, learning how not to. Both lessons are equally important. How not to is more painful. How to can be a little more exciting, but it all goes back to the choices we make prior to birth. We choose our birth parents. We make a covenant with them. What are they going to learn from me, and what am I going to learn from them? And we know roughly the probabilities for the first 20 years of our life. And we choose very carefully our body, our society, our financial. We choose all those things so that we can experience, we can learn passion, compassion, and the exuberance for life by either not having what we want or having what we want. Both of my parents were alcoholics. They were older and they worked a lot. They ran a restaurant, so they were working 16, 18-hour days. I was an only child, so I pretty much raised myself in many, many ways. And for years, I thought I carried that victim mentality. Oh, you know, the child of an alcoholic. Well, that was garbage. One day I woke up because I got yelled at. And they said, look at what you've learned about who you are because of what you had to do for yourself. And look what you learned what not to do because of what they did in their life. You got exactly what you asked for from your parents. And I had to think about that for a while. And then one day in college, I was asked to write a story about what gave me the greatest anger. And I immediately thought, well, I'm a child of 2 alcoholics. There was not one bit of anger or remorse there. And so my paper turned out, I can't answer your question because they taught me to be who I am. And so we set up those opportunities in our life so we can learn and grow. And we choose lifetime to lifetime what we're going to learn. And to me, that is more the meaning of life. Many people are learning how not to, many are learning how to. And exactly like Joseph Campbell said, it is different for each person, but it is magnificent of and by itself.